Anyway, here's this is an old Jeffrey Lewis song. This is called The Last Time I Did Acid, I Went Insane. If I remember how to play this. It was a night in July, a long time ago. Why'd I eat the acid? I don't know. I wasn't thinking and I wasn't scared. Why did I eat the acid? I wasn't prepared. The last time I did acid, I went insane. And I was hanging out with some friends, just getting loaded, when all of a sudden my mind exploded. I had a flash that I was gay and I got paranoid. I was sitting on the floor listening to Pink Floyd. The last time I did acid, I went insane. And I was drawing crazy pictures, and before I was done, the picture started pulsing like an alien one. And I said, oh my god, this has just begun. And it was 12 more hours before I was done, and we were up on the rooftop. And I'll tell you the truth, I was convinced I'd already fallen off of the roof. And these weird metal things all around that space, they were teleporting me from place to place. The last time I did acid, I went insane. So we ran back downstairs where it was better to be, but I was trapped in spiral staircase infinity. And when we got to the door, I couldn't go inside, cause it was the gates of heaven and I had died. The last time I did acid, I went insane. And this kid named Grim, he punched a cat in the head. He could read my thoughts, that's what he said. And he described what it was like, but I didn't believe it. Like lifting a rug and seeing stars beneath it. And the first rule of tripping was don't be with people you don't trust. The second rule of LSD, the rooftop is not a good place to be. The third rule is to be prepared. The fourth rule is to not get scared. The fifth rule is to stay serene. Turn off your mind and float downstream. The sixth rule's to have a good friend at hand. The seventh rule, I hope you understand, is not to look too deep into your soul, or you might find a hideous, hopeless hole of hatred, hunger, infinite, idiot, mindless, meaningless, nothingness, 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 nothingness. And that's what I did. Because I started thinking about my life, and I started thinking about the fact that right now, at this moment, I had crystal clear powers of thinking. My mind had never been so elevated and accelerated and been endowed with incredible powers of pure mind calculating. And I thought back, at this moment, I think I can see through the misty veils of the past all the way back into the first moment of my birth. Perhaps I can just look back and understand who I am and how my character built from nothingness. And I realized that every moment of my life was in fact somewhat like a transparent cube. Like each second was like a little ice cube, but it wasn't made of ice. It was like a sort of plastic transparent cube, and each moment of my life was another second stacked on top. And I could sort of look back through this towering, teetering stack of moment cubes all the way back down with my absolute powerful, crystal clear vision of sight. I had never attempted to focus so intently on this little tower of cubes. Why hadn't I ever tried to look right back down all the way through all the years and all the moments back to the first moment I was born? But then I realized there was something behind that moment, and behind that moment of my first consciousness, there was the life force underneath all of my experiences. And I realized that underneath everybody's stack of moments, there was the life force. And I realized that I could stare all the way down inside myself and see the life force that exists within us all. And it was a pale, white, sort of glowing blob, and it was somehow repulsive in its nothingness element. The fact that it had no consciousness or ideas or associations, it just had greed. It basically just wanted to eat and breed and not feel cold, and it had a hideous, selfish, alienated and alienating element. And I realized that underneath all of us, in fact, underneath every living thing was just this repulsive, pale, glowing life force that was utterly meaningless in its self-absorption. And I realized that all of us were just constructs of false ideas and impressions and completely arbitrary associations that had built up and stacked up on top of this basic life force. And that everything that we believed was so arbitrary because of how these ideas had come to us throughout our lives, and therefore everything that we believed was meaningless, arbitrary and meaningless. Stacks of arbitrary, meaningless impressions that we had gleaned from other people, like as though we were all just white snowballs bouncing down a mountain, infinite amounts of white snowballs bouncing, and as we bumped into each other, we would kind of pick up little smears of color from each other, these colors being impressions and ideas and associations of what was good and what was bad, until we were rainbow streaked with all of these associations, and then would just end up dead in a heap at the bottom of the mountain, all for nothing, as more and more millions of snowballs and lives would bounce off of each other and cascade down the mountain. And I realized that nothing is true because everything is true, because everything that everybody believes is true for them as they believe it. And I realized at that moment that I had short-circuited my own mind and destroyed my own consciousness, because I realized so intensely that everything is true because nothing is true, because everybody believes something different is true. And I also realized that even that thought is just what I believed, and so I was stuck thinking that thought forever. Because if what I believed is true is that everybody believes something different is true, if anybody ever tried to disprove to me that what I thought was true wasn't true because something else was true, it would only prove to me that everybody thinks something different is true, which is what I think is true. And my consciousness had snapped, and why had I done this to myself? Why? Why would I choose to destroy my own consciousness? My mind will never be able to heal now that I've found this fundamental root of thought and snapped it and broken it forever. And then at some point I realized I'm probably not the right kind of personality to do acid, and I probably shouldn't do it again. And so I didn't do it again, but I ended up writing that song about it.